Hello again and welcome back to the PhatPhish Guitar Studio. Today I'm going to be following up a video that I did a little while ago talking about fret buzz causes and cures. Somebody left a comment on that video the other day asking about whether or not a guitar neck should actually be straight, because I think in the video I actually say about adjusting the truss rod to make sure that the neck's straight. Now that's not strictly true. What you should have on a guitar neck is a very slight bow to make it completely playable. So I thought what I'd do in this video is take the guitar down onto the bench and show you a little bit about how to measure string relief and how to adjust the truss rod. It's the sort of thing that scares people because if you adjust the truss rod too much or you adjust it wrongly, you can damage the guitar. But hopefully if I show you what's involved with doing this, it'll give you the confidence to proceed with a little bit of caution, and you can make truss rod adjustments on your own guitar to get it playing as well as possible. Okay, so let's take the guitar down, get it on the bench and get cracking. Okay, so we've got the guitar down on the bench now. Usual bit of safety, put an old towel or mat or something down. It protects the work surface from scratches from the guitar, which is important if you're doing this like on your best dining room table or whatever. It also prevents the back of the guitar from being scratched by the hard work surface. In terms of tools that you need to do this, we need some hex keys, Allen keys, hex wrenches, a set of imperial and a set of metric here. These are fairly cheap to buy from like tool stores. It's worth having around even if you're not just using from your guitar. For your guitar stuff, there's a load of different uses around the house, so it's a good thing to have a set of these. Some truss rods are just using a different tool. I can't speak for what type of guitar you've got, but I know that this particular one, as is common with a lot of guitars nowadays, has got a hex wrench adjustment. Other tools that you will need, it's really useful to have one of these. It's a feeler gauge. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And also we need a capo. It doesn't matter if it's really expensive capo, really good quality, or just a cheap one. It doesn't have to be playing quality, it's just something that we can hold the strings down at one end of the neck while we take some measurements. And I'll explain in a while how we're going to use these. Truss rod will be adjustable from one of two places. Either from down here at the headstock end. Now you might have direct access to the truss rod channel like we have on this guitar, or you may have a little plastic cover which you need to unscrew and that'll get you access. Other guitars, the truss rod adjustment will be down at this end. You might be able to get at it without removing the neck. Other guitars, you'll find that the truss rod adjustment is actually like a flathead screwdriver sort of thing, where you need to take the neck off to be able to get the screwdriver in to adjust. It just varies from guitar to guitar. If you've got a guitar with a set neck or through neck, the truss rod adjustment will be down here. This, like a lot of bolt-on guitars, also has the adjustment down here. Personally, I prefer this just for ease of access, but like I say, it varies from guitar to guitar. What the truss rod does is it provides strength in the neck and it fights back against the tension in the strings. So if you think about it, if you don't have any sufficient strength in the neck and there's so much tension in the strings, then what will happen is the neck will bow like this. So best way to illustrate it with a banana. So you're exaggerating it a bit, but that'll kind of be the shape of the neck. As the strings are pulling, they'll pull the headstock end up. So what we do with the truss rod is we tighten that and it pulls the neck against that tension, more toward as if it was going to go towards that sort of shape. Obviously the string tension's fighting that, so you should end up with something that's reasonably straight. And this is where the truss rod adjustment comes in. It's about getting the tension in the neck in the truss rod right so it balances against the tension in the string so you have something straight. Now in the previous video I talked about having a straight neck, and somebody, like I say, queried me on that and said, is it meant to be straight? I was told it should be a very slight bow, so like a very slight shape like that. And actually you're right. The reason I tend to say straight is I'm always worried if I say you need your neck with a slight bow, that people will pick up on that wrongly and take it that the neck is meant to be bowed. If the neck's bowed too much, then the string action is going to be way too high around here. So guitar neck, yes, it does need a very, very slight bow, just for playability, but you don't want a really, really pronounced bow. What I'll do is I'll show you now how you can measure what's called the neck relief, to tell you if the truss rod is right, or if it's too much that way or too much that way. Okay, so for this we need a capo to start off with. So I'm just going to use this little keyring capo here. If you're doing this on a guitar that's got a raked back headstock, like one goes back at an angle like a Gibson, or like a lot of the like Ibanez, Chevelle, like shred machine type things, you need to make sure that the neck's adequately supported. It's not resting on the headstock. That's not good. That's how headstock joints get broken. This one though, it's a straight headstock, so no problems. We just put the capo on at the first fret. Get that on nice and tight. Okay, now there's two ways of approaching this. Some people will tell you that you need to fret, having put the capo on at the first fret, you fret at the 17th fret and measure the string height at the 7th fret. Other people will tell you to fret at the highest fret possible and to measure the string relief, measure the string height at the 12th fret. Either way will do. And this is where these feeler gauges come in. Now these are useful tools to have. The sort of thing you can actually pick them up from like an automotive tool supplier. Get used a lot in the automotive industry for checking spark plugs and so on. And basically all they are very precise thickness pieces of metal, and marked with different grades from this is 1mm down to 0.05mm and various graduations in between. Fairly oily, so I'm just going to, because I don't want to be getting oil all over the guitar, just clean these up a little bit. So the idea is that you will have a recommended string height. So if I fret my guitar here at 17th fret, I need to be able to know what the string height is at the 7th. Now I've got various gauges here, so let's just start off with say 0.3mm here. So fret the guitar and we're putting the feeler gauge in between the fret wire and the string. And what we should be able to feel is, does that go in and just touch? Now here that's a little bit too big a gauge. That 0.3mm, I can feel it, and I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but I can feel it just pushing the string up ever so slightly. If we go down to something smaller, say 0.025, measure that. Again, that's pushing up ever so slightly. So that tells me that that gap there is smaller than 0.25 of a millimeter. So I've got various gauges here I can use to measure that. What that height should be will vary from guitar to guitar. Depends on factors like what string gauge you're using, what tuning you're in. If you look around, if you'll find references on the internet that will give you a recommended string height. So what you need to do is make sure that the neck is the right adjustment. So when you say, okay, I know that I need 0.015 millimeters of clearance. If I fret that, know that the feeler gauge will go in. You can feel it brushing the top of the fret and the bottom of the string, but it's not appreciably pushing it up. If the gauge goes in and there's movement up and down, like if I used a very, very small one here, it's 0.05 millimeter, put that in, that's sailing around, there's plenty of space for that to move. So I know that the gap's considerably bigger than that. You're just looking for something where it just touches top and bottom. So find what works, what height you think it should be. So find a reference chart online. I can't give you a precise measurement because it depends on from guitar to guitar. And you should be looking for that sort of adjustment on both the bass and the treble side. It should be the same. If it's higher on the string relief is higher on one side and lower than on the other, it's a sign that the neck's got a slight twist in it, which is something you probably need to get a luthier to look at, because that's probably a more significant repair job. But let's talk about truss rod adjustment. Having decided what the clearance is here from the string to the fret, if it's more than the recommended amount, that's a sign that the neck's like this. It's got a bow in it. The string's tension is more than the tension in the truss rod and it's pulling it to be too curved. What we need to do is tighten the truss rod to straighten the neck out a little bit, reduce the amount of bow. If when you measure it, that string height is smaller than what it should be, it's probably a sign that the neck's got a crown to it. It's like that, and the strings are touching. The strings are lower to the fret than they should be. What we need to do is loosen the truss rod, ease some of the tension off, and let it pull the neck straight a little bit. So let's talk about adjusting the truss rod. Now I happen to know that the truss rod on this is 3/16 of an inch. So I can use my 3/16 of an inch, so knocking the camera there, 3/16 of an inch Allen key. And then that goes into that slot there, and feel around, and you can feel it going into the end of the truss rod. Feel a nice solid click. What we're going to do is just loosen the strings off slightly here. We don't need to completely slacken them. But what we do need is just to have a little bit of room to adjust the hex wrench. Now if the neck has got a crown to it, we need to release the tension. So we're going to turn the truss rod to the left. If the neck's got a bow on it, we need to increase the tension, so we turn the truss rod adjustment to the right, and that increases the tension. Now this is the really important bit, and this is one of the reasons people get scared about doing truss rod adjustment. Very slight adjustment of the truss rod here can have quite a significant impact on the action on the guitar. So no more, absolutely no more than 1/8 of a turn, if that. You can always turn it a little bit more. So if you think the guitar needs to have the truss rod tightened, take it, just turn it around to the right. No more than that, no more than, say, well, not even 1/8 of a turn. If you haven't adjusted the truss rod for a while, if it's the first time it's been moved, it might be a bit stiff, and when it does move you'll hear what sounds like an almighty crack, and you'll think you've damaged the guitar. It's not. It's most likely it's just the truss rod hasn't moved before, and it's just kind of just unsettling, and the crack is just beginning to move. As long as you don't rotate this, like I say, no more than 1/8 of a turn, if that, you're not going to do any sort of damage. Any crack is probably just the truss rod sort of like releasing itself. So you make your adjustment, and then just let the guitar sit for a little while. Just let it settle out for 5 or 10 minutes. Then tune it back up to pitch, and make your measurements again. Having made your measurement, make an assessment. Is the string clearance at the, where if you're fretting at the 17th, if the string clearance at the 7th fret is right, then you've got your truss rod set right. If it's still too high, then you need to tighten the truss rod another little bit. If it's still too low, you need to slacken the truss rod off a little bit. But do it in increments. Don't wade in and just do big quarter turn or half turn or something like that. That's where things start to get damaged. So just do things by small amounts, measure it, make an assessment, readjust, wait until you get it right. If you're not confident about doing this, get a professional luthier to do it, because it can be quite daunting. It does come with the health warning that, you know, if you overdo this, you put too much tension on the truss rod, it can warp the neck or damage the neck, you know, which is either going to result in a big repair bill for somebody to put it right, or you can damage the neck permanently, and, you know, effectively you need to replace the neck on the guitar altogether. So proceed with caution, but it is the sort of thing you can do yourself. When you do this, depends on sort of what you're doing with your guitar. I recommend you do it once or twice a year. Just, you know, when you change your strings more regularly than that, but I think once or twice a year it's nice to give your guitar a full setup where you check the intonation when you're changing the strings and all sorts of other bits and bobs. Once or twice a year, particularly around the time the seasons are changing. Just check what your string action's like, what your neck relief's like, and adjust the truss rod if you need to do that. If you're changing string gauges, you've got a higher gauge or a lower gauge, or you're using the guitar in an alternative tuning. You know, say you've got this and you want to drop everything down from a regular E tuning down to E flat, there's going to be less tension. That's the sort of case I would say do all of your setup stuff, change the strings, let the guitar get settled with new strings, new tuning, new gauge strings, whatever. Let the neck settle, then do a measurement of the truss rod and adjust it if need to. So general rule is, if you're sticking with the existing string gauges and string tuning, check the truss rod first, swap your strings and do your setup. If you're changing string gauge or you're retuning, do your setup, then check the neck relief, adjust the truss rod if need be, and always at the end of it readjust the intonation, because that changing the truss rod might have an effect on the intonation. But like I say, it's the sort of thing you can do yourself, but if you're not confident, get a professional luthier to do it, because it is the sort of thing you can do a bit of damage to the guitar if you overdo adjustment on the truss rod here. What you're aiming for though is a neck that has got a very slight bow, so basically you can play without the strings buzzing against the frets higher up the neck. I tend to refer to it as a straight neck, so largely because I don't want people to think that by nature you have a bowed neck, because people will get the idea that your neck needs to look like that, which it doesn't. It's a very slight bow. But as I say, by using the capo, fretting it, and using a feeler gauge, you can measure the string height there. So there you go, there's a quick overview on what the truss rod does, how to measure string relief, how to adjust the truss rod. One thing I probably should have mentioned, I'm talking about getting recommended string height measurements. You need to be careful that the string height measurements you look for are where the guitar is capoed at the first fret and fretted somewhere, and you're taking a measurement somewhere along the neck. You will see some charts where they give you recommended string height, but it's basically unfretted, uncapoed, just the string height at the 12th fret. So make sure you're looking at the right sort of chart, because the measurements will be different. Okay, hopefully that's given you the confidence to have a look at your own guitar setup and to make the adjustments that you need to. As I said though, if you're not confident where the truss rod's concerned, err on the side of caution and take it to a professional luthier. You should be able to find one at your local guitar store who'll be able to do any adjustments necessary. The reason is you can damage the guitar, you can damage the guitar neck if you're a little bit overzealous with adjustment on the truss rod. Very slight adjustments, measure, adjust, measure is the way to go, rather than going for big quarter turns or half turns, because that can damage the neck, so be careful. I hope you found that useful. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe and whatnot down there. If you got a question or suggestion for a future video, then if you go here, there's a form where you can submit your question, and I'll try and get around to answering it in a future video. That's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.